I saw something really gross today that I just need to vent about. There is a pastor in Indiana named John Lowe II, which sounds like a generic NPC name in The Sims, and he went on stage in front of the congregation to admit to committing adultery 20 years ago, and received a standing ovation for his honesty. The crowd was cheering as if it was E3 and their favorite video game just had a sequel announced. A massive, uproarious round of applause. All because this guy publicly admitted to cheating on his wife. And then it wasn't until the person that he had the affair with came on stage that they realized, maybe this isn't something to be happy about, because the victim was a 16-year-old girl that he molested and sexually abused at the church.
In case you don't know, I'm Pastor John Lowe, and
I already hate this shit. Pastors are worshipped more than Jesus, it feels like. I have absolutely no problem with religion or anything like that. As most of you know, I was an extremely religious youth. I got baptized twice just because I was afraid God might have missed the first one. And while I may not be religious anymore, I do still get it. But what I've never understood is why pastors themselves are treated like gods by the people that go to church. It's super counterintuitive. It goes against everything the Bible teaches. The people are there more to worship and suck the dick of the pastor than they are to, give thanks and praise Jesus. And it happens all the time, especially with pastors like Kenneth Copeland and Peter Popoff. They'll just blatantly say, we need you to give us all of your money because we require another jet to preach the good word of the Lord. And people will happily just give up their family's entire earnings to the church, to the pastors directly, to support that greed. Just actual evil assholes. I'm getting carried away, but you can see it right away here, where they're just shouting and cheering because this guy said his own name. Dude's up there to publicly confess to an actual fucking crime, and he still can't help but get cheered on like he's a rock star for it.
I committed adultery. It was nearly 20 years ago. It continued far too long. It involved one person, and there's been no other, nor any other situation of unbecoming conduct for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I highly doubt that last part from the confession where he says this is the only person it happened with. I imagine he's probably done this to multiple other victims, just a little sneaking suspicion. He's doing his best to tiptoe around the details here because he doesn't want to reveal that the victim was underage and how fucked up it all was. So he's being very careful with the way he describes the adultery.
While applying church discipline for sexual failure, for repentance, confession, and restoration, I myself had not been disciplined for sexual misconduct. I will not use the Bible to defend myself or to beat you into scriptural submission.
I'm not gonna lie, this part actually shocked me here, him saying that he's not gonna use the Bible to defend himself. That's the number one thing the Bible has been used for hundreds of years, to defend some awful shit because of a disgusting interpretation of what the Bible says. And what's even more shocking is the way that he describes the Bible here makes it sound like it's a chair in the WWE. He says, I'm not gonna beat you into scriptural submission. Bruh, it sounds like some kind of promo material that Hulk Hogan would have said, hey brother, I'm gonna use the Bible to lay the smackdown on you at the upcoming WrestleMania Raw.
Meanwhile, I hope you believe God called you here. Meanwhile, I hope you believe that God called you here, perhaps for such a time as this. Amen. To believe, to forgive, to heal, so that God can reveal His goodness to you.
Man, what the fuck are you talking about? I certainly hope there'd never come a time where the Lord calls me into church specifically to listen to some bumbling goober confess to molesting a 16-year-old girl. Why would he want me to be there for that? Why would he want any of these people to go to church to listen to that? Because I know it wouldn't be for forgiveness. No shot. Absolutely not. And what makes me really infuriated here, and I guess I can't really blame the people, it's not their fault, but them just agreeing with him saying amen as if he's making a good point. When he's saying, I hope you believe God called you here for a time such as this, so that way we can heal, forgive, and you might see His goodness. Phrasing it in a way where it's if you forgive me for my actions, then the Lord might be really nice to you in return. Can I get an amen, huh? You want a shiny new car? Well, you might want to forgive me for this crime. The Lord might provide.
I have committed to the Lord and now to you that I will submit to the process and recommendations of this board.
Yeah, a standing ovation for that. Amazing. There was a couple people, like, you could hear kind of cheering lightly throughout the thing, which is weird too. Like, fucking pumping their fists, like, oh my god, the pastor's fucking, and it's not his wife. Whee! Yeah! Absolute wild and wackiness. They're treating it as if it's like a little fucking Super Bowl kind of event. But let me warn you, what you're about to hear next is pretty heavy and hard to listen to. The victim herself comes forward to actually paint the picture of what happened that the pastor was leaving out. And she says this to the people that were just giving a massive round of applause and standing ovation to the guy.
I lived in a prison of lies and shame, lying to protect the Lowe family. For years I thought I was a horrible person having suicidal thoughts, not realizing what had been truly done to me. I'm a prisoner no longer. I was just 16 when you took my virginity on your office floor. Do you remember that? I know you do, and I have plenty of other stories that I could bring to remembrance.
She describes in detail the actual nature of the adultery that he was so desperately trying to dodge. He was trying to, do his best to avoid every possible raindrop of detail surrounding this, but now she's the storm that's come through and has revealed all of it to the people that were just cheering for this evil man. So, I don't want to play too much of it here because, like I said, it is hard to listen to. She says it started when she was 16, and there were witnesses and people that knew what was happening, but when she tried to talk about it, all that was done was that it was covered up.
If you did it, you need to admit it. That's right. 100%.
I told you I committed adultery. I told you it went on far too long.
Did you do it? That's all we need to know.
Yes, we did.
You didn't tell them she was 14 years old.
No, at 16.
Now the crowd's turned on him with the pitchforks out and looking for a biblical beatdown of their own for this guy. And this comes because the woman, the victim, came forward with a lot of information about what happened, as well as her partner coming forward with additional information that they revealed in front of the entire congregation publicly. And now the crowd that was just cheering for him is no longer super thrilled about it. Adultery, I guess, was totally fine. They were okay with adultery and long-term adultery. But now that they've learned that it was against an underage minor, well, that's changed the whole narrative. I think both are bad. Obviously, it's worse that it's with a kid, but I don't think there was still any world where they should have been cheering for the guy who just admitted to cheating on his wife for so long. It's still fucked up. I am glad, though, that they at least somewhat came to their senses like, Jesus, this is bad, this shit is not good.
That's just the way it is. It's not all true, but that did happen, yes. And all I can do is ask you to forgive me. And I'm doing what the Bible process or biblical process is in the church. I'm stepping down, stepping aside.
For everything that we have done wrong in our lives, that you begin to heal us, Lord.
And then once again, I was disappointed by the people here when they went up to give this guy a hug during their prayers. I'm just gonna say it, I don't think there's any power in forgiving someone like that man. That guy is a fucking monster. This went on for years, and it started when she was underage, and it was covered up. There's no power, and there's nothing righteous about forgiving an actual piece of shit like that. So the fact that after they learned all this information, after everything that was talked about during the service from the victim as well as her partner, after all of that, they still go up there and embrace him and seemingly forgive him, I guess, if the body language is anything to go off of. Just a horde of people go up there to give a giant group hug in the showers here, all up there huddled around each other like they're trying to recover a fucking fumble in football, all around that guy. who is a bad guy and doesn't deserve the forgiveness. Anyway, this video just made me upset. I wanted to talk about it, and that's really about it. So yeah. I couldn't decide if this was a good idea for a video to make just because of how dark and disturbing it is, but earlier today I saw a thread on Twitter going around listing the most evil artists and musicians of all time, and absent from the list was by far the most evil singer to ever hit the mainstream, Ian Watkins. And I was just shocked that not a lot of people seem to know about this. This was a story I followed as it unfolded back in 2012 because Ian Watkins was the frontman to my favorite band when I was a kid, Lost Prophets. In fact, if there's any archaeologists watching this and want to unearth some unholy relics, if you're able to find any re-uploads of my old Gears of War montages from 2007 and 2008, you'll hear Lost Prophets music that they're set to and edited in sync with. I used their music all the time in videos growing up because I was such a massive fan, so you can imagine how fucking disgusted I was when I learned the truth behind their singer. Ian Watkins' crimes are some of the most depraved I've ever read about, and in fact, the senior investigator said it was the most disturbing child abuse evidence he had seen in nearly 30 years on the force, and it's not an exaggeration. Ian Watkins was a serial child sexual abuser and even convinced some of his fans that were mothers to give up their kids to him to abuse, and would even convince the mothers to abuse their own children on video calls that he'd masturbate to. His sex crimes spanned years and even included the sexual abuse of a 10-month-old baby and attempted rape of a baby. Not only were his crimes some of the worst you could possibly imagine, but he was blatantly open about them as well. He'd even brag about fucking kids to some of his ex-girlfriends at the time. I feel like if the police officers had just asked him, hey, are you having sex with minors? He would have hit them with a, hell yeah, brother, and then went up for a high five. The whole story of Ian Watkins and his arrest is also the story of terrible police work from the department. There were years of reports and people desperately trying to get him behind bars, and they just wouldn't look at the evidence. They refused to look at all of the overwhelming evidence that was constantly being provided to them. The reason he ended up getting arrested was on unrelated drug charges, and they just happened to find this absolute fucking mountain, like a goddamn Mordor. They wandered in there and happened to find all of this child abuse evidence, but they were there for drug reasons and continued to turn the other cheek and ignore all of the reports coming from victims or people that had already compiled evidence and submitted it to them. Now, like I said, he wasn't very secretive with what he was doing. He wasn't exactly like some kind of cunning, sly, criminal mastermind. He was very open with the fact that he was a pedophile. Just look at this excerpt here. Look at one of the passwords he'd use for his computer. Ian Watkins is a sick psychopath who's currently serving 35 years in jail, which isn't nearly enough for his crimes. And he's not remorseful about it either. Like, just read this quote here, where he said he did it for the mega lols, talking about abusing and raping kids. So anyway, after reading that Twitter thread about evil artists and musicians, I really think it's worth talking about this guy and his history, since it seems it flew under the radar for a lot of people. So I'm just going to give a brief summary of everything Ian Watkins and Lost Prophets related. As I mentioned at the beginning, they were my favorite band when I was a kid. Before I even got into rock and metal, like with the other mainstream bands, I was listening to Lost Prophets. You know, this is way back in the day, but there was something called Pixo, which allowed you to make your own websites easily. And when I was in 4th grade, I made my own Pixo website called coldflames.pixo.com. Don't even bother searching for it. It's dead and buried 6 feet under, went straight to hell. Not even on archive.org. But on my Pixo website, the very first thing that would happen when you went there is the music video for Lost Prophets' Rooftop song would play. That's right, I was like an early adopter of the K-pop stan culture where they just spam music videos everywhere to farm views for them. That's what I did for Lost Prophets on my website. So their music video for Rooftops would play, and then if you went to any of the other links on the side, a different Lost Prophets music video would play. I don't remember everything I posted on that website. I know a lot of it was RuneScape related, like giving updates on my character. But when I was giving updates, you would always be having a Lost Prophets music video play, like Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja or something like that. But yeah, all that to say, I was big into the band, so this shit hurt a lot learning about this. I've always had that mentality of you need to separate art from artist when it comes to things, but I've been unable to do that for this band. They were my favorite band when I was a young kid. I can't listen to them anymore after learning everything about Ian Watkins. It's impossible for me. I can't separate the art from the artist, especially considering Ian Watkins in one of their music videos even subtly hints at his crimes. In the music video for A Town Called Hypocrisy, Ian says at the end, "Hi kids, welcome to Town Time. We have an amazing show for you. You're going to learn all kinds of important lessons." And in hindsight, it's pretty clear what he was like saying here, knowing his history and what was actually going on behind the scenes. And it's so fucked up. Now let's get into the actual timeline as well as history of Ian Watkins and the band. I'm not going to be showing much footage at all here. I'm mainly just going to be telling the story. It just doesn't really sit right with me to show anything from them. Knowing what we know now about Ian Watkins, it just feels fucking weird and yucky. However, there is a great breakdown of this whole situation from a channel called Gamers Inked, and they do show footage from the band as well as interviews of Ian Watkins, and they do a great job with it, so I recommend checking that out if you're interested in seeing more from the group as well as Ian and who he was as a person. But for me, I'm not going to be showing any of it, so let's get into it. Ian Watkins was the stepson of a Baptist minister and was an honor roll student. He basically fucking straight A'd his whole career as a student, graduated with honors from the University of Wales, and then in 1997 formed the Lost Prophets. They saw moderate success with their first album called The Fake Sound of Progress, but it was in 2004 with their follow-up album, Start Something, that they really broke into the mainstream spotlight. They sold 2.5 million copies and were propelled into stardom. They had their music videos on MTV. They even had Last Train Home on the soundtrack to NFL Street, which was a great game. NFL Street had a fucking wild soundtrack, but yeah, they were there. They were everywhere. Montages, back when Halo 2 montages were just starting to get their feet, Lost Prophets really took it by storm. They were a mainstream success, pretty much overnight with Start Something. With all the success came a lot of fans, many of which were underage girls that Ian Watkins would invite backstage after gigs. And from a couple of sources I've read, there were even rumors circulating around this time from media outlets that noted that there were minors backstage at these concerts around Ian Watkins, which made them uncomfortable, but they didn't really report on it or do anything on it, so I think that's a big fucking blunder from them. That is absolutely something that I think they should have raised an eyebrow with and looked into a bit deeper, but regardless. 2004, they had Start Something, they were blowing up. Ian Watkins was already abusing his status and starting to bring underage girls backstage. Then around 2008, he started getting addicted to hard drugs like crystal meth and cocaine. There was even a Music Insider that revealed more information to the depravity that was happening behind the scenes. They really blew the lid off the case of what was exactly going on back there. One of Ian Watkins' exes gave an extremely in-depth explanation for all of the awful shit that he was doing and interested in, from child pornography to bestiality to him believing he was invincible and untouchable. Her name is Joanne, and she spent years gathering evidence against Ian Watkins in order to get the authorities to take him in, investigate, and arrest him, but was ignored at every possible turn. I think Gamers Inked video does the best concise breakdown of the timeline here, so I'm just going to play a short clip from it before getting a little more in depth.
But did find it strange that there were so many young girls around the band that often. Joanne began receiving disturbing text messages from Watkins in 2008, following an incident in a video discovered by the police, in which the two are having sex, and Watkins is heard to tell Joanne that he can't wait to get you pregnant so they would have a child to abuse. Joanne then received a text message from Watkins in 2008, in which he bragged to Joanne that he had sex with multiple underage girls. Joanne, disgusted by this, went to the police immediately that same day, but unfortunately this would be the first of many instances in which Joanne was ignored.
It is worth noting that she did also say some horrible things to Ian. However, her side of the story is she was trying to gather as much evidence against him as possible to submit to the authorities to trap him and bring him to justice. So I think that's worth bringing up. She went to the police multiple times with her phone and laptop and asked them to look into it. Here's all the evidence, now please use it. And they never did. I don't know what their excuse was for not investigating further. Maybe because she was a sex worker for a time, so they didn't take her seriously, but they just wrote her off as an angry ex. Ian Watkins would regularly brag to her about having sex with kids. He would even send her images of actual, sexual abuse of children, and they just never took it seriously. At least, not until Ian Watkins was actually arrested, and then they launched a massive investigation and arrested Joanne for possession of those images that Ian sent her. So she got arrested for the possession of the evidence she was gathering for the authorities who just weren't doing their job here. She was eventually cleared of these charges, but still, just an awful situation all around. He could have been stopped much, much earlier if the authorities had bothered to look into it even slightly. Because, like I said, he wasn't really hiding anything. There were a lot of rumors dating as far back to 2004 about some of the awful shit he was doing. Like, they could have just done the bare minimum and gotten this guy way before 2012. You know, in that time, how many more victims were there, you have to wonder. It also wasn't just Joanne that was submitting all of this evidence or making all of these claims against Ian Watkins. There were a lot of different people that came forward. For example, an Australian woman told police that Watkins was a child abuser and drug abuser. Her email even concluded saying, "Do not disregard this as it's serious." Nothing happened. There was other complaints, including intelligence reports about Watkins' drug use and sexual interest in kids that kept getting submitted to the South Wales Police Department that didn't get investigated. In March 2012, a woman even told police that Watkins may have sexually assaulted an 11-month-old boy, and then even described images that could be found on his computer if they searched. But they didn't search. Now, I'm going to look into the case just a bit, but I'm not going to go that deep because it's way too gross to talk about. It's so bad, in fact, that the judge that sentenced Ian Watkins, as well as the two mothers I mentioned at the start of the video that abused their kids for him, he said this: "Those who have appeared in these courts at the bar or on the bench over many years see and hear a large number of horrific cases. This case, however, breaks new ground. What you three did plumbed new depths of depravity." The full sentencing remarks can be found online, but I don't encourage anyone out there to read them because they will make you sick to your stomach. You will absolutely fucking puke. It'll ruin your whole day trying to read this. I'm only going to read a couple and bits and pieces of them. I can't read half of this shit. It's so fucking painful to even say. I'm only going to do a couple here, just to give you an idea of how bad this guy was. This isn't even the whole thing. So here, count 18 dates back to March 2007. You met after a Lost Prophets concert when she was a 16-year-old virgin. The prospect of taking her virginity excited you. You got her to dress in a schoolgirl's outfit and you videoed her and you having oral, vaginal, and anal sex. You asked her whether she enjoyed being your underage slut. At the end, you urinated over her face and told her to drink it. That gives you some insight into your attitude to young females at the time. Over 5 years before counts relating to count 19 dates back to August 2008. The girl was another fan, age 16. You videoed her having oral sex with you, and she is seen snorting white powder, which you told her was cocaine. This next part, I think, is going to be one of the most disturbing things you'll probably ever hear. This is in regards to the mothers, to one of them in particular. But you were a mother. Your infant was only 10 months old. A mother naturally loves, protects, shields, nurtures, and cherishes. Your infant would have trusted you implicitly. You betrayed that trust. What did you do? You had a detailed discussion with Watkins about the sexual acts to which the two of you were going to subject your infant. That's as far as I'm going to read, because then it goes into detail about what happened with Watkins, the mother, and that baby. And there is a video of it where they are sexually abusing a 10-month-old baby. And it's described in detail in the sentencing remarks. It is horrific. And this isn't all of it. Like, these were only 3 counts that I just read to you. It goes on and on and on. I think Ian Watkins is the biggest monster to have ever existed in any capacity as a celebrity or a singer, and just one of the most depraved individuals I've ever read about. They talk about the child pornography images and videos he has with kids aged 2 to 12. It's like an endless amount of the worst things you could possibly imagine. So yeah, I think the answer to who is the most evil artist or musician of all time is Ian Watkins. There's a long list of horribly fucked up celebrities out there, and I think Ian Watkins is somewhere towards the top of that list. That's about it. So yeah. I'll be honest, I don't usually cover topics like what I'm about to touch on today because it's extremely serious. Usually the stuff I cover is things to point and laugh at, throw tomatoes at, say boo, stinky, yucky, boo. Not this. This is horrifying. It's a story I haven't seen a ton of people mention, and I myself didn't know about it until a few nights ago, where just some random chatter during stream mentioned it. And I looked it up, and the information was only a few minutes old. Like, I don't even know how that guy had access to it so quickly, unless he's like one of the chief investigators on the case that just typed it in the chat. But when I looked it up there wasn't a ton of specifics mentioned about the case. But I followed it over the last few days as more and more information has come to the public eye. It is truly evil. And to my knowledge, this is the first case where a live stream was used as an alibi in a murder case or anything of that magnitude. There, of course, has been cases like with Facebook live streams and even YouTube a couple times where horrible atrocities were committed live, but I think this is the only time that someone has tried to use a live stream to prove their innocence and act as a smokescreen to cover up their crimes. Now, the person I'm about to talk about hasn't been found guilty yet, but they have been charged with murder with overwhelming evidence. Extremely compelling and strong evidence. On December 18th in Ireland, a woman named Natalie McNally was stabbed to death in her own home. She was 15 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. And the person accused of the murder is a man named Stephen McCullough. He is a YouTuber as well as streamer. He mainly focused on toy reviews as far as I can tell, specifically seeming to be a big Doctor Who toy reviewer. So what happened is, on the night of Natalie McNally's murder, Stephen McCullough went live on his channel. And this live stream is still up right now. It's a 6-hour live stream. And this was crucial evidence to prove his innocence on this evening. Because how could McCullough have possibly killed someone when there's proof of him streaming from his home at the same time that the murder had taken place? So they eventually, after bringing him in initially on suspicion of being involved in this case, let him go, because this live stream did serve as a pretty good alibi for him. Plus, this wasn't just streamed to 0 viewers, there were real sentient human beings with a pulse there to watch this stream, so should any of this information ever come to light, there would be a lot of witnesses saying, no, I was watching him stream, he was 100% at home. So that was his whole plan. And while this worked for a brief period of time getting him out of suspicion, it was an ephemeral victory because after the investigators combed through about 4,000 hours worth of CCTV footage, they kind of pinned his whole location. They got his whole itinerary here. They were able to track him around and follow him around like it was a fucking Sims character. So not only did they see him through the CCTV evidence, but they also have the account of the taxi driver. They even took notice of things like a yellow glove underneath a black glove while giving change to a bus driver. And with all of this, they had a really strong case against him being the murderer. But they still had that live stream to explain. Because again, there is a live stream that did span the entire course where all of this took place. So how the fuck does this happen? You know, is he David Copperfield? Like, what, 2 places at once? Is this some kind of prestige situation where he had like a twin or a clone of himself? The actual answer is it's far simpler than you would possibly ever think. The live stream was fake. Yes, the stream went live on his channel during this whole period of time, but it wasn't actually a live stream. It was a pre-recorded video that Stephen McCullough had recorded days prior in order to look like a live stream, to mimic a live stream, so that way it could be used as an alibi for him. And when you watch the live stream, which again is still up on his channel, there are so many alarming red flag moments throughout it, even from the get-go. So he mentions at the very beginning of this live stream that he's not going to be able to read chat for a variety of technical reasons. One of them being it would crash his computer, it'd freeze the computer, it'd ruin the whole stream because of all of these deep tech problems that he couldn't solve. Everything's gone cattywampus, so he won't be able to read your chat. More like, Doctor, who's talking? Because I can't see you, I'm not reading chat. He just keeps reiterating over and over and over again that there's going to be no chat interaction. Because obviously, since this is a pre-recorded thing, there is no chat for him to read or interact with.
Well, because this streaming software is kind of up the left, it means I can't check the live chat, which is a real shame. Can't look at the live chat for some bloody reason, because if I do, it makes the whole thing freeze and OBS just screws up.
And he just kept like explaining why he can't read chat, and then he started talking about like, well, I guess I could read it on my phone, but you know, I get addicted to TikTok when I'm on my phone, and that's a mess. So I've put my phone in timeout in another room, so I won't be reading chats there either, and that'd probably ruin my internet too anyway. So no chat tonight. You guys can talk amongst yourself. I don't even like live streamers who read chat, so no chat for me tonight. There's plenty of streamers who don't interact with chat, but to go this long and this in-depth on things that make absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever to explain why you're not going to be reading chat or reacting to donations is definitely a little odd. And there's plenty of other really alarming moments about this stream, especially looking back on it in hindsight. He keeps reiterating that he's live, this is live, and he's staying inside all night. He talks about like drinking and driving, and he'd never drink and drive, which is why he's staying inside, drinking on stream live for his viewers to enjoy. He's playing GTA Vice City throughout the stream, and he's making comments about like how the police force is no longer like equipped to handle cases, and there's a rise in crime. It's in the real world he's talking about. It's all very fucking alarming stuff, but by far the scariest thing he says has to be this.
Yeah, that's physics. That's what would happen in the real world. Abso-fucking-notly. Abso-fucking-notly.
Completely out of nowhere, unprompted, he mentions someone named Natalie in a pretty menacing way. And once again, there's plenty of other things he says in here that are very scary, but I think this one is by far the worst moment. This has been 100% confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt to be a fake live stream. When authorities seized some possessions, they found the actual video itself and concluded that it was filmed on December 13th or 14th. And also, McCullough himself has confirmed that the live stream was not actually live, it was pre-recorded, but insists that he was actually just drinking by himself alone that night. He completely denies the murder and insists that someone else may have been dropped off in a taxi near his home. This is referring to the CCTV evidence that they've gathered, pinpointing all of his locations throughout the evening. There's also other awful shit here as well. McCullough stayed pretty close to Natalie McNally's parents, and in one case even left his phone over at their house in order to like bug them and secretly spy on them to record their conversations to see if he was a suspect. So McCullough went to the McNally house, left his phone on record, and left, but returned 40 minutes later claiming to have forgotten it, and police were saying that this was an attempt to listen into their conversations to see if they suspected him of anything in this. I can't envision a world where Stephen McCullough is not the person who committed this crime. There is just an overwhelming amount of evidence against him. And he still doesn't have a real explanation for what the possible motive to faking the live stream would even be. Nothing that makes sense, at least. And then randomly dropping Natalie's name during it. I just cannot imagine that this man is innocent, but he hasn't been found fully guilty of being the murderer yet. But yeah, overall, a horrifying situation. I'm wishing the absolute best for the McNally family, and I'm hoping justice is served here. That's about it. So yeah. I went over to my family's house for dinner a couple nights ago, and my father was raving and couldn't stop talking about a case I'd never heard of that apparently is just wrapped up. The Alex Murdaugh murder case. And in fact, it extends beyond that. The entire Murdaugh family murders. This is a very high-profile case that I just hadn't heard of until my father started lecturing me on it like I had just taken a criminology course. He apparently followed every single piece of evidence that dropped. He watched every trial, everything. My dad studied the tits off of this case like he was going there to prosecute Alex Murdaugh himself. And it piqued my interest. It made me want to learn more about it. So I went to the best goddamn channel on YouTube for things like this, Legal Eagle. Legal Eagle recently made a full, beautiful breakdown going over every single piece of evidence and every single key point in the entire Murdaugh history. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description, but I just kind of wanted to share it with all of you because this is one of the more deep and disturbing cases I've learned about in quite a while. So I just wanted to share kind of the gist of it with all of you, but I highly recommend watching Legal Eagle's video on it if you want to learn the most about it and see how everything unfolded. You see the Murdaugh murders. So my dad just told me about that. I didn't know anything about it. And he was apparently embezzling money for a long time, a pathological liar, an oxy addict, and he snapped and killed his son and wife. My dad was telling me all about it, apparently. Or, not apparently, my dad was telling me all about it. apparently it was a wild case, and I didn't hear shit about it. Yeah, apparently the prosecutors had a video that the son had recorded that proved that Alex Murdaugh was lying about his whereabouts on the night of the murders. So I guess the story was they were killed at like the dog kennels on their property. Alex Murdaugh claimed that he wasn't there that night at the kennels, and he had like a couple alibis because they had his whole phone record. Apparently he called a ton of people to try and get a couple alibis. And eventually the prosecutors showed a video that his son had recorded literally minutes before he was murdered. His son he killed also got in a boat accident that killed a girl named Mallory Beach, and also was the only witness to his housekeeper dying, and he embezzled her life insurance. Oh, what the fuck?
Close. Los Angeles area double murder expert O.J. Simpson predicted that the Alec Murdaugh jury would acquit the Low Country lawyer of double murder. It turns out that Simpson's powers of prognostication don't really work for murders he wasn't directly involved in.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least if this guy beats this case.
So before I explain...
It's crazy. It is crazy. We have O.J. Simpson on Twitter dropping reaction videos, giving his opinion on how another murderer could potentially beat their case. That blows my mind.
Randolph Murdaugh Sr. was elected solicitor in 1920 and served until he was killed by a freight train in 1940.
Sounds like a murder. That sounds like an actual old Western murder where they tied him to the train tracks. Don't know the situation, it literally just sounds like he was murdered.
Now, some people suspected that the freight train incident was a suicide because no one could figure out why Randolph's car stalled on the tracks. But Murdaugh Sr. was succeeded by his son, Randolph Murdaugh Jr., known as Buster, who held the position for 46 years
cool
from
nickname.
1940 to... On two separate occasions, 20 years apart, he told jurors that if they didn't impose the death penalty on a criminal defendant, he would use his power as solicitor to release other rapists into the community. Yes, you heard that right.
What?
It's hard to imagine a worse thing a prosecutor could say in court, but I'm sure prosecutors have.
And he got to keep the position? He would make these threats like, okay, if he doesn't get the death penalty, 5 rapists will go into Gotham. He sounds like the Joker. What? Elected official, so he just campaigns and pays off the right people. Yeah, but I'm sure there's still systems in place where if you're threatening to release rapists out of like a grudge, you can get fired. Like you can get like taken out. Like you lose your position, I would think. Because it was the 70s. It's not like rape was cool in the 70s either. I'm sure people weren't like rallying behind him like, yeah, that's fucking Buster right there. That's how Buster plays. Get the death penalty. Or 50 rapists. Buster, release 50 rapists into the neighborhood. The guy really had rapists in the queue to join the server. Oh, you're talking about Buster still, yeah. I'm just going to take a guess that the other Murdaughs didn't use the same tactic.
Alex Murdaugh, the now convicted murderer, is Randolph III's son.
All of this information is to show you that the entire Murdaugh line is fucking evil, basically. Now that you're brought up to speed on where Alex Murdaugh comes from, let's talk about his kids, because his kids are no saints. Legal Eagle goes into more detail surrounding some of these cases, but I'd just like to give you a quick breakdown. If you want more information, obviously watch his video on it. But one of Alex's sons, Buster, who is named after, of course, Buster Murdaugh, who came before him, is actually a person of interest in a 2015 death. A young man named Stephen Smith was found dumped on a Hampton County road. There wasn't a whole lot of indicators to suggest that this was a vehicle crash, and in fact was even ruled a homicide by a couple of people, most notably the county coroner. And interestingly, Buster Murdaugh is mentioned dozens of times in the investigation. Also, Alex Murdaugh and his brother Randy visited the crime scene, passing through the crime scene tape, and there were rumors that Buster Murdaugh and Stephen Smith were in some kind of relationship, and this case actually just got reopened after the entire Alex Murdaugh investigation. So that's all a bit peculiar. That doesn't seem good. Something smells very fishy over there with Buster Murdaugh. And he's not the only one. In fact, Alex Murdaugh's other son, Paul. In 2019, Paul and his friends were partying on a boat. At one point, his friends say Paul and his girlfriend got in an argument where Paul assaulted her, and then eventually the night culminated with the boat crashing, everyone surviving except one person, Mallory Beach. Paul was blamed for the death because he was fucking driving the boat. He received 2 charges, 1 boating under the influence causing great bodily harm, and 1 boating under the influence causing death. So as you can see, the Murdaugh family is known for more than just financial crimes. There's a lot of death linked to the family as well. And there's still more. There's still one that I haven't even talked about, one that happened before Alex Murdaugh killed his son and wife. In 2018, their housekeeper Gloria Satterfield allegedly tripped over one of their dogs and fell down the stairs and died at their hunting lodge. Alex Murdaugh then instructed Gloria Satterfield's sons to sue him for insurance money. However, he neglected to inform them that he had already collected on 2 settlements and basically robbed them of about $4.3 million from the insurance here. The man is just pure evil, just a shriveled, pruny, fucking ghost-looking motherfucker whose entire bloodline seems cursed and is nothing but bad news. It is disgusting.
His lawyer said he planned to sue Alex and Maggie personally because they allegedly kept a beer refrigerator at the hunting lodge and underage kids were free to drink up. Given the scale of Alex's financial crimes, discovery of his assets would have revealed years of Murdaugh's criminality. Later that same night, Alex allegedly found Paul and Maggie dead outside the kennels at the Murdaugh's sprawling hunting estate.
I'm really trying to break this down into the most concise form possible just to convey like the general story of the situation, but again, I can't recommend checking out Legal Eagle's full video on it for the absolute best breakdown. In a nutshell, years and years and millions upon millions of dollars of stolen money and financial crimes were about to be brought to light, all of which Alex Murdaugh was panicked about. So, the main theory behind his motive for killing Paul and his wife Maggie is he needed some way of buying time to weasel his way out of this situation. I shit you not. The murder of his son, Paul, and wife Maggie, right now the leading theory is he did it for sympathy, to portray himself as a victim, and to basically just buy himself some extra time to get out of the situation because all of these financial crimes that have built up over years were about to be fucking blasted publicly. All of it was going to come to light. So that was his plan. Now, Paul was murdered before he ever stood trial for the death of Mallory Beach. But I'm getting a little ahead of the story because there was one other baffling situation that occurred involving a hired hitman that Alex himself hired to shoot and kill him so his other son could get his insurance money.
So Alex admitted to stealing from Chris and blamed his behavior on an opioid addiction. And then hours later, that same day after that conversation with Chris, Alex was shot in the head. Yes. Seriously. Does this seem like a far-fetched Netflix series yet?
So, now we're at the part that I know. Everything that preceded this, fucking wild. No clue. But now we're getting into the part that my dad was talking about, and now I'm kind of in the know on where all this goes. Chat just educated me about this, so I have the spoilers here. But I guess I won't drop the spoilers. But I see now what has happened and how things have got to this point.
Yes, but I mean, I'm okay.
Alex later admitted that he hired his cousin Eddie to shoot him. So Alex's remaining son Buster could
get the life insurance.
$10 million life insurance policy. But apparently cousin Eddie wasn't up to the job because the gunshot wound was
National
just
Lampoon
that temporarily blinded Alex. Eddie would also turn out to be Alex's oxycodone dealer. Alex later admitted that he stole from his law partners and clients to fund his addiction to painkillers. According to
Hold on, then my dad's calling me about the Murdoch shit that I just sent him with this. Hold on. Yeah, well, did you even know about all of the Murdoch shit with his family? Like how his son is most likely responsible for deaths as well?
Yes.
You,
And his son that, like, was in the boat accident.
yeah, the boat.
Yeah, the whole deal. I mean, yeah, I know all the background of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then how he tried to set up, like, his own...
Yeah, I just got to that point. Cousin Eddie to like a hitman to shoot him for the life insurance policy for Buster.
Yeah, and then they fucked that whole thing up.
Okay, I didn't know if you knew any of that because you didn't mention it. That shit's crazy.
Well, see, that's why I haven't been playing any games. I got so into this shit. I'm like, I can't stop. It's like, see, that's why I said this is 10 times better than the goddamn O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely wild. I had no idea it was like so deep reaching.
I know. See, that's what I'm telling you. So you think it's pretty cool, right?
Well, cool is like probably a weird word to use for it, but like it's fascinating. Like it feels like it's some kind of crazy movie. Yeah, he's really into the whole Murdoch shit. He got like encyclopedic knowledge on this whole thing apparently. He didn't even mention the family stuff, so I thought that'd be news to him. Yeah, no, this whole family's rotten. Although I haven't heard anything about the mother, so maybe she didn't do anything terrible. I have no idea.
For violent schemes.
Real quick though, was his plan actually to die? Like, did Alex Murdaugh hire cousin Eddie, goofball McGee, red-blooded patriot, fucking wild maniac to come shoot him and kill him? That's wild. So his plan was actually to die. He said, come shoot me in the head. And then he survived. He's like, damn it. Time to change plan. Wow. Hey, a lot of things can be said about Alex Murdaugh, but God damn it, he gave it 110%. This man was ready to literally kill himself so that way his son could still have some fucking cheated funds. $10 million life insurance policy.
The drug dealer. The trial's biggest bombshell was an unsent Snapchat
Yes,
video
this is the one that my
recovered
dad
from
was
Paul's
talking
phone.
about.
Alex told police he had last seen his son and wife 90 minutes before he found their bodies. Several witnesses testified that they could hear Alex's voice in the background of the video. Did the Snapchat video influence Alex's decision to testify on his own behalf? Almost certainly yes. The very first
Well, yeah, and I think that is very clearly his voice in the Snapchat video. Very clearly.
thing Alex did on the witness stand was fess up that he lied about being at the kennels. Alex admitted it was his voice on the video.
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you?
So then he absolutely just admits to a lie right there. I do want to point out, this man's got some wild hair coloration here. This looks like a weird slider in a Dark Souls creator. He looks like a French fry with like some cheese sauce on the top. That shit is going hard.
You lied to Sled Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th.
I did lie to them, and I'm so sorry that I did.
Other than lying to them about going to the kennel, I was very
Holy
cooperative
shit.
in every aspect of this investigation. When Alex's brother Randy overheard Alex trying to bribe a nurse to let him use her phone, he thought it was suspicious. And brother Randy called the police and the story began to unravel.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Sled sketch artist and spent...
Man, this guy just straight up looks evil. He looks actually soulless. Those are some hollow, empty devil eyes right there. 100%. Sometimes people just look the part.
But in an earlier interview with investigators, Alex had actually implicated his groundskeeper. He also told the jury that someone angry about the death of Mallory Beach committed the murders. These inconsistencies undermined Alex's credibility. Then there's the mess with Alex's financial crimes. The prosecution argued that Alex's financial crimes couldn't be separated from the murders because exposure of his vast financial crimes was one of the motives
speaks to his
for killing
characters.
Maggie and Paul.
Well, not only that, I imagine that also helps to demonstrate, like, make a character profile, right? I don't know if that is actually something that's usable in court, but doesn't that also serve to poke holes in the credibility since all of these financial crimes hinged on a bunch of lies and embezzlement and all of that? Or is that not allowed?
every single one of these, you had to sit down and look someone in the eye and convince them that you were on their side when you were not.
Wow, that's hardball.
Do you remember even one of them?
If you ask me questions, but I can't remember sitting down with Dion.
Alex's response? What I admit is I misled them. I did wrong, and that I stole their money. What Prosecutor Waters was getting at was this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Alex Murdaugh is sitting there and looking at you in the eye to convince you of something, but you shouldn't believe him. Just look at how he lied in the past.
That's
Moreover,
strong
Alex
as fuck.
testified that all of his financial bad deeds were caused by his drug habit, which was costing him as much as $60,000 a week. As for the weapons, prosecutors said casings for bullets from a .300 Blackout rifle were found near Maggie's body. And the Murdaughs owned a rifle chambered in .300 Blackout, and the weapon is now missing. Alex also couldn't account for the clothing he was wearing on the day of the murders. His clothes had never been found. His mother's caregiver testified that after the murders, Alex tried to remind her about what he was wearing.
I guess it's easy in hindsight, but I feel like even if I was in the court as this was unfolding, the second it came to that point, both of those in conjunction, I'd be like, well, he fucking did it. What kind of coincidence is that? Oh, so they were killed with .300 Blackout rounds. Oh, you have a weapon with .300 Blackout. That's a weird coincidence. Can you bring it in so we can just make sure like everything's, all good? Oh, it's missing. Well, what happened to it? Oh, you don't know. Oh. Okay, well, what about your clothes? Can we, like the clothes you were wearing on that night, maybe they picked up some forensic evidence from the real killers. Oh, you lost your clothes. You're telling me a burglar came in the middle of the night while you were sleeping and took the fucking clothes off your back? Even your dirty goddamn undies, he took them? Oh. Like, what the fuck? This is outrageous.
The speed of the jury's verdict, just 3 hours of deliberation
Oh,
after
nice.
a trial lasting a month and a half.
That's a gold split.
Speaks volumes.
Yeah.
The day after the verdict was read, Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences for murdering his wife and son.
Today we're talking about a serious topic that I'm shocked hasn't become a bigger story. Right now the only YouTuber that's covered it is Some Ordinary Gamers, Mudahar. Shout out to Mudahar. He's a sweet, special little angel, a butterfly with a heart of gold. And he's been talking about this story, or talked about it yesterday, and it's been ongoing for a little while now. It involves a beloved YouTuber that I was personally a fan of, even made a video on him a long time ago, and a YouTuber that I'm sure many of you have probably heard of before. Feature Man. His channel used to have nearly 450,000 subscribers, but he's been losing a good handful of them now due to the story that's come out. And he's also deleted a ton of his videos. He's purged his whole channel, burnt down his own Library of Alexandria here, so a lot of his biggest content no longer exists, but you probably remember him from going viral a few times for how to eat a watermelon, for example, where he kind of became this wacky watermelon old guy. He really broke the magician's code with that video. He opened everyone's third eye to the truth, the optimal way of attacking a watermelon and consuming it. And his whole channel had always existed in this limbo, this fabric between dimensions, between realms of, is it satirical or is this guy serious? He's an older gentleman, and people are wondering, is he geriatric? Is he senile? Because his recipes, and that was the main bulk of his content, was like goofy recipes, were always unhinged. Like digging out a hole in a watermelon and dumping fucking onion powder and a shoelace in it and being like, yep, this is a good watermelon recipe. Or a fucking pack of Vienna sausages and then putting mustard on it and then slamming it in between 5 pieces of bread and then putting sprinkles. Like all kinds of crazy shit, really. And for a long time, he cultivated an audience where they were laughing along with him. But now nobody's laughing after a series of investigations conducted by the community revealed a very fucked up past. It turns out he's not some innocent, wholesome octogenarian just posting YouTube videos and he's a good saint or anything. He's actually just evil. He, in the past, was facing 3 consecutive life in prison charges due to infamous crimes against nature for his sexual contact with minors. And after this information came to light, Feature Man himself even posted a video, which he has now deleted, where he kind of tackled all of it head on, while tiptoeing around the actual specifics of the case. I'll play some clips from that for you real quick. And I highly recommend watching Mudahar's video on this whole thing, because he goes very in-depth going through the actual court documents as well as the newspaper clippings that the community has all put together. I'm just going to be giving you like a general breakdown of this whole situation. It's fucking rough.
About 1977, I became involved with the court system once again. I was arrested. I was tried, I was convicted by a jury, and I was sentenced. And the sentence was life in prison. And the sentence was life in prison. And the sentence was life in prison. Three lives in prison.
Knowing what I know now about this man, I can't even listen to him without getting the heebie-jeebies. The way he's talking here sounds like Palpatine when he's going over the Darth Plagueis the Wise story to Anakin. Many abilities deemed unnatural. Like, it's fucking terrifying, especially given what he has done. So, this is him kind of laying out the foundation that he received these 3 life in prison charges, and he maintains that it was a complete corrupt law. This infamous crimes against nature law for which he was tried and found guilty of was a whole bunch of baloney. It was all fucking dirty barnacles and foul play. The supposed victim, it was never a minor, over 18, he makes sure to specify.
And without getting into details, I will say that there was a trial, and the witness against me, and he was over 18 years of age, the witness against me admitted on the witness stand that he was lying.
Darth Sidious is doing his best to placate and omit important details. He tries to talk about this infamous crimes against nature law as if the reason he fell victim to it is because it was just completely fucked up, right? So he's trying to say, like, back during the time that this happened, which was like 45 years ago now, this law was used as just like an anything goes. They were real loosey-goosey with it. If it wasn't a relationship between a man and a woman, they could slap you with the infamous crimes against nature law. And he tries to present this law as if it was this boogeyman that he himself was on the front lines of justice fighting against. He mentions multiple times that he helped have the law changed around. But he makes it sound like, it was just completely a wild west of law enforcement here. If you kissed your body pillow that had a waifu on it, you would have went right to jail under the infamous crimes against nature law. If you are a furry, they would have thrown you right in the slammer under this law, this and that. And he's trying to make it seem like because his situation wasn't a man and a woman, that's why he stood trial for his crimes. He fails to mention that even though it wasn't a man and a woman, that's not the problem. It was because it was him and a child. But he's trying to make it seem like it was because they didn't tolerate gay people, they were homophobic, and that's what the law was used to, that's why they used that law against him. He just continues to omit the fact that it was a minor. Him saying that the witness was 18 years old is extremely misleading, because while the witness may have been 18 at the time of that trial, he was not 18 when he was a victim of Tom. He was a minor. This happened years later when he was on trial and was 18, but when the actual yucky events happened, he was a child. So Tom, in this entire video here, tries to play himself off as a victim, but also narcissistic in that he celebrates his victory over this whole case and how he gets off with barely even a fucking slap on the wrist for all of it. It's fucking sickening.
Like, at the end of the day, obviously this isn't an interaction between a man or a woman, but it's also not an interaction between a legally aged man and another legally aged man. Again, reading the court documents, it involves a minor. Reading the news clippings, it involves a minor well under the age of 18. Well, why not include that into the situation? Again, without getting into details, I can see why he wouldn't get into details, because there is no actual defense. This boy to a room to introduce him to the guitar, a musical instrument. But the session ended in the first act of oral copulation. So again, it only says the first of several acts. It wasn't just one, it was multiple.
Now, I bet you're wondering how he was able to weasel his way out of this sentencing. 3 life sentences, that's not exactly small potatoes by any means there. That's not like a you wouldn't download a car situation where you're pirating John Wick 2 or whatever. This was very big. and he was able to wiggle his way out due to a fucking technicality. One that I still don't fully understand how he was able to pull off. Even after watching Mudahar's video and reading into it myself, I still don't quite understand how he was able to get away with such a slap on the wrist in light of all of these charges in the sentencing. I'm still a little confuddled by that. So I encourage you to look into this case if you were once a fan of Feature Man as well. I'm not going to even bother trying to tackle exactly how the technicality works that got him out of this extreme sentence that he was facing. But one thing is very clear. Tom shows absolutely no remorse for any of this. He also seems to have a very favorable view of himself, where he's almost like a hero who fought against an archaic law that was used against him unjustly, while never revealing to his audience that the victims here were minors. He continues to skirt around that fact, and it's fucking gross. So yeah, like I mentioned, I did like Feature Man's content. I didn't watch like every single upload, but I did watch a good handful of them. Like I said, I even made a video on him a long time ago. And this was an absolutely wild development here. This would have been like learning Mr. Rogers was secretly selling heroin to kids. I just couldn't believe this when I saw Mudahar posted the video, and now I'm just disgusted by this guy. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. That's about it. So yep. Today we're going to be talking about a pure evil YouTuber that was just arrested for some truly heinous stuff. This is not a goofy topic at all. This is going to take that smile off of your face faster than if you had watched a James Corden clip. This is the story about Ruby Frank of the very popular parental advice / parenting blogger / family YouTube channel 8 Passengers. Which is already a really creepy name, by the way. 8 Passengers does sound like some kind of cult. 8 Passengers sounds like the title to a horror movie. And unfortunately, that's not far off, because the woman behind this YouTube channel, Ruby Frank, is basically a monster out of a horror film. Ruby Frank and her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, were arrested this week, and they're being charged with 6 counts of child abuse. Now, Ruby wasn't alone with the 8 Passengers YouTube channel. Her husband, Kevin, was also prominently featured in there as well. But for some reason, he's not mentioned in any of this right now, aside from a couple of mentions that he's just trying to keep the family together and help the children through this difficult time with Ruby being arrested. But I can't imagine a world where Kevin was somehow oblivious to all of the abuse the children suffered in that household. There's no way Kevin didn't know what was happening. Unless he's an absolute fucking lobotomite zombie, there's no way he didn't know what the children are being subjected to. I just can't imagine a single multiverse possibility that Kevin is squeaky clean in this situation, just totally innocent, had no idea what was happening to the kids in that house. Especially considering in 2020, Kevin was front and center fighting on the front lines to defend himself and his wife against abuse allegations, defending their parental style. I'll go into a bit more detail on that situation a bit towards the end of the video, but basically, some viewers were really concerned for the safety of the children based on what was being presented in some of the 8 Passengers videos, as well as what was being discussed, such as taking away one of the kids' food privileges, as well as one of the kids' bedroom privileges, and eventually they tried to get CPS involved, and CPS did get loosely involved, but the whole time Kevin was defending the actions that they had been taking with their parenting. So like, I don't believe that he didn't know about all of the abuse that was being suffered in that household by the children. But since right now it's only Ruby and Jody who have been arrested, I'll focus on them. They go over some of the stories and videos that she would proudly post on her channel, where she just openly admits, proudly, almost bragging, about torturing her children. She built a reputation as being a strict parent with a strict parental style, but strict is not the right word for it. This isn't like some kind of teacher that's like, hey class, settle down, no fishy business, we got work to do here. And this isn't even strict like, you know, your fucking basic training drill sergeant or anything. This the way she treats her children is like the way prisoners are treated at Guantanamo Bay. She fucking posted a video where she was laughing about not feeding her daughter any food because she was punishing her. And she even said that she hopes nobody gives her daughter any food because if she did, then the lesson wouldn't be learned. She was starving her daughter as a means of punishment. And it only gets worse. I learned about this on stream, so I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the clips and go over some of the stories that were shared. I think it's important to mention that this was not some small obscure channel. The content they were posting wasn't just being banished to the Shadow Realm immediately with no eyes ever being on it, no one ever seeing it. This was a huge channel. 8 Passengers had 2.5 million subscribers. I know it's become somewhat of a trend in journalism to try and like clickbait headlines with things like famous TikToker arrested for DUI and jiggling butt cheeks to Doja Cat Say So on the side of the road. And you read that and it's very eye-catching because it's like, famous TikToker, oh shit, well who was it? And then you'll read the person's name in the article about the crime and then you'll check their TikTok page and it turns out they have 50 followers and all they do is speculate on anime power levels. And it's like, well, not exactly a famous TikToker, but it's 2023 so everyone has some kind of social media presence and journalists will oftentimes just connect it to that. So famous TikToker does this or famous Twitter shitposter does that, even though they're not exactly a famous TikToker or this and that. But in this case, it really is a famous YouTuber, a very large YouTube channel that gave tons of parental advice for a very long time, had a very successful family vlog, and then even went on with Jody Hildebrandt to start doing life coaching and general life advice. All the while, she'd been abusing her children the entire fucking time. I don't know, there's something about that picture that's super eerie. It reminds me of something out of like Midsummer. A Utah mother known for chronicling her strict parenting style was arrested after one of her children ran to a neighbor's house seeking help. Her channel name was 8 Passengers. They had 2.2 million subscribers. Ms. Frank hosted the now-defunct YouTube channel 8 Passengers, where she posted videos about her parenting approach with her 6 children, including refusing them food as a form of punishment. Wait, and she did this on YouTube?
My kids are literally starving. I hesitate to say this because it's going to sound like I'm like a mean barbarian, but I told the kids, I said, I'm not even going to let you eat breakfast until you get your chores done.
The red flags were all there. She was hiding in plain sight. That's actual torture. You can't do that. Miss Frank and Miss Hildebrandt were each charged on Friday with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse, according to the Washington County Attorney's Office. Each count carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison and a fine up to $10,000. According to the affidavit, Miss Frank's 12-year-old son, identified as RF, climbed out of a window of Miss Hildebrandt's home and went to a neighbor's house on Wednesday morning asking for food and water. The child had duct tape on his ankles and wrists as well as open wounds. He appeared to be emaciated and malnourished. This is some pure evil shit. The neighbor called the police, who then found Miss Frank's 10-year-old daughter Eve at Miss Hildebrandt's. She also appeared to be malnourished, the affidavit said. Both children were taken to the hospital. The boy was placed on a medical hold due to his deep lacerations from being tied up with rope and from his malnourishment, according to the affidavit. Oh my god. At one point, Miss Frank had 2.5 million subscribers to her channel, following the lives of her 6 children. In 2020, Chad Frank, then 15, told YouTube viewers in one family video that he had been sleeping on a beanbag for months and that he had lost his bedroom after playing a prank on his little brother. How did she get away with it for so long? If this was literally in their YouTube video. She, on camera in her TikTok or whatever, said that she denies her children food as a form of punishment, and then apparently one of the kids also revealed that he had lost bedroom privileges for months after playing a prank. How? How did this persist? This should have went straight to prison. Do not pass go. In one video recorded by Miss Frank and reposted to TikTok, she said her daughter Eve's teacher had called her to say Eve had come to school without lunch. Miss Frank said the teacher was uncomfortable with her being hungry, but that Eve was responsible for making her own lunch, and that the natural outcome is she is just going to be hungry. Hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her a lunch, because then she's not going to learn from it. And this is all on video. She said this on video. How how was CPS not alerted sooner? Oh, and apparently there was even a bunch of like petitions from the community to try and get them taken down because it was actual evidence of child abuse. But it looks like none of that was taken seriously. We've been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and so glad they finally decided to step up. Kids are safe, but there's a long road ahead. Oh, this was one of the children. Sherry Frank, now a junior at BYU, posted about her mother's arrest on Instagram saying justice is being served. So one of the kids was trying to alert CPS and the police and they didn't do anything? How would you not trust one of the victims of it? Especially when there's so much documented evidence on their own fucking YouTube channel. Now, I mentioned on stream how surprising it was that this hadn't happened sooner when she openly posted content about some of the abuse she was inflicting upon her children. And it turns out a lot of the community that was aware of this channel was actively trying to get CPS involved, especially when it came to that beanbag incident where one of the children made it clear that they had been sleeping on a beanbag for an extended period of time because they had lost their bedroom due to that prank that they had played on one of the siblings. So CPS did get loosely involved at some point, but Ruby was somehow able to like brush them off and nothing came from it somehow, which blows my mind because this isn't one of those situations with hindsight being 2020. This isn't one of those things where you can just say, man, if we only knew then what we know now, we could have really helped them. Because this is so clear cut. Like, this should have been a no-brainer that something was wrong. For an authority figure to look at any of these videos, it should have been a massive, alarming situation. Fucking sirens should have been blaring. The second that Ruby was proudly gloating, wiggling her finger, celebrating her incredible parenting of just depriving her children of food as a punishment, that should have been enough to get authorities involved and learn about what was actually happening here with the Ruby Frank household. It's super infuriating that this went on for as long as it did, when a lot of people did keep trying to push this forward to CPS to get them to take action, knowing that something was wrong and knowing what Ruby was posting about and saying was not okay. It's not strict parenting, it's actual abuse. By every possible definition. This is not something where it's like, builds character, toughen up, sport, rub some dirt in it. You know, you're not getting breakfast. In fact, you're also not getting your bedroom. It's gonna put some hair on your chest. You're gonna learn something today. You know, it's not anything like that. It's fucking abuse. This isn't parenting. I can't believe that it went on for so long. I'm happy now finally something is being done, but I feel fucking horrible for the kids in this situation that they'd been let down not only by the person that's supposed to care for them more than anyone else in the world, their mother, but they were also let down by the authorities that are supposed to be trying to help them in an emergency situation. It shouldn't have taken this long. Ruby's sisters also have hundreds of thousands of followers, so they posted an Instagram statement that said, "For the last 3 years, we have kept quiet on the subject of our sister Ruby Frank for the sake of her children. Behind the public scene, we have done everything we could to try and make sure the kids were safe. We wouldn't feel right about moving forward with regular content without addressing the most recent events. Once we do, we will not be commenting on it further. Ruby was arrested, which needed to happen. Jody was arrested, which needed to happen. The kids are now safe, which is the #1 priority." I've just got to say that statement of "we kept quiet for the last 3 years for the sake of the children" doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because keeping quiet wasn't helping the children. They were being abused, and if you were aware of that, how the fuck would being quiet somehow help them? How is that doing everything you can behind the scenes to keep them safe? That's doing nothing. That is literally the Simpsons meme of "we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas." Now, I guess it's possible they didn't know the extent of the abuse that the children were suffering, but even still, if you were aware of children being abused in any capacity, you should have been doing everything in your power to get the kids out of that situation. Being quiet doesn't get them out of the situation. That doesn't do anything to actually save them or keep them safe. You should have made a lot of noise and kept going to authorities over and over again, gathering as much evidence as possible to try and help those kids. And maybe they were. Like, this is, again, just a very short statement, so maybe they were, but them saying that they kept quiet for 3 years to keep them safe, just it doesn't compute. Because that's not keeping the kids safe, that's keeping them locked in that prison with the monster. Now, as was mentioned by one of the daughters, there was a lot of attempts to get police and CPS involved that just didn't work. So it is possible that perhaps the sisters here were actively trying to do that and kept trying to get authorities involved unsuccessfully. It's just that saying you kept quiet for 3 years just it really isn't clicking with me. I don't know why you would be quiet for 3 years if you were actively working to keep the kids safe. Let's imagine that one of the kids wasn't lucky enough to break free and escape through a window and get help from someone nearby. They'd still be tied up right now in that house, and you would still be being quiet. This fucking ridiculous silence is golden strategy didn't help the kids. The only person it helped was your sister, because it allowed her to keep abusing those children for 3 more years. And the only reason this even came crumbling down and she finally got arrested is because one of them broke free, covered in deep lacerations, and was able to get help so they could all be saved. Had that not happened, you would still be quiet and those kids would still be suffering. I know I'm getting pretty heated here, but this story is just infuriatingly evil. I am happy that Ruby and Jody have been arrested. I hope they get the absolute maximum sentence here. But I do still think there's other people that knew what was happening in that household that should also face very severe punishment for allowing that to happen and continue happening for as long as it did. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. That's about it. So yeah. On TikTok there lives many evils, some cringe, some criminal. Just like the Force with the Jedi and the Sith, there exists a balance. And today, we're gonna tiptoe and tap dance all over that line between cringe and criminal as we look at a completely deplorable individual named Madison who hatched a diabolical scheme to fake cancer, apparently with the goal of getting her family back together. At least according to her, that's the statement she made in court as to the motive behind faking cancer. Which, if that really was the goal of it, that is a worse plan than anything Ed, Edd n Eddy ever hatched for jawbreakers back in the day. It makes no sense, but basically, she faked cancer, eventually started getting, like, public speaking gigs, I suppose. She documented her battle with it in an attempt to, like, uplift people, I suppose. She also made a GoFundMe which collected like $37,000, which turns this whole thing from just a complete fabrication for the sake of attention, possibly, into a full-blown scam where she was taking money from people under a complete lie. And then eventually the whole house of cards came crumbling down after an investigation concluded that she made everything up. Now, I can't find the first videos she started to post about this. It only exists, from what I can find, in a Ray William Johnson video he just posted covering this, so I'm just going to show you a clip from that.
They found a mass on my pancreas, and I had stage 2 pancreatic cancer at just 19 years old.
Oh, but that's not even the worst part. She also had leukemia.
The 5-year outlook of survival is a slim 11%.
But does all this stop Madison? No way. She sees it as an opportunity to document her battle and uplift others.
What an incredibly evil thing to lie about. Now, of course, she's far from the only person on the cyberspace to lie about having cancer. In fact, there was a really recent story I just talked about like a month ago about a poker player who lied about having terminal cancer in order to raise money to enter a poker tournament. But anyway, back to Madison. So she posted a lot of update content going over what was happening, and this includes photos that she would take. Photos that she would stage, since she didn't actually have cancer. And I can't find a ton of them. The only one that I can find that was a big smoking gun is, again, from Ray William Johnson's video. So he's got, like, all of the old artifacts here to preserve the story, I guess. So I'll show you a picture of it here, which is this. And a lot of medical professionals saw this and noticed that there was some very fishy shit going on here. It was starting to raise some red flags, sound the alarm bells that, uh-oh, this may not be a case of her having cancer, but instead an undiagnosed case of terminal clout disease. God rest her soul. So the medical professionals pointed out a lot of things that just didn't make sense about the photo. Some inconsistencies, not even using real medical tape, just a laundry list of problems with the photo. And anonymously reported it as suspicious. It got the attention of the Eldridge Police Department, and they conducted an investigation, eventually subpoenaed for medical records from Madison, and found that she'd never been diagnosed with any kind of cancer or tumor from any medical facilities. So it turns out her cancer diagnosis is about as real as Goat Man, which is to say, not real at all. Sorry to all the Goat Man enthusiasts out there. I don't mean to burst your bubble. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but it is what it is. He's not real. But what is real is this mugshot right here. Madison was arrested in January. I also didn't mention that even outside of like that one big photo that a lot of people pointed out and heavily scrutinized for inconsistencies, she was posting other photos that weren't hers, apparently. She would use photos from actual cancer patients and post them as if they were her updates, which is unbelievably evil. Like, the whole thing is so genuinely disgustingly evil, but like, to me, when I learned that portion of it, I couldn't believe just how low she sunk for this. Also, it was recommended that Madison not face prison time because she didn't have criminal history and had good grades in college, was employed, which made her less likely to reoffend, which I think is a bunch of baloney. What a load of dirty barnacles. What do her good grades in college have to do with anything here and her ability to lie about having cancer again? No, she'll never do this again. Wait, look at her report card. She has an A in kinesiology. Obviously, she's not going to pull this stunt again. Don't be ridiculous. No prison time at all. She's learned her lesson. Just slap her on the wrist, send her home. So, someone spoke up about that. Her name is Rhonda Miles, and she runs a pancreatic cancer foundation in Nashville. And they actually donated to Madison and testified at the hearing. It was devastating to sit there and watch Scott County prosecuting attorney act like a defending attorney, so that was tough. And I think she'll have a lot of questions to answer from the locals on that at some point. Why are you defending this girl when you were supposed to be prosecuting? I couldn't agree more. This is not something that is just some whoops-a-daisy mistake, kind of silly, stupid, quirky, dumb decision that a young person makes. It's not. This is a cold, calculated, evil plan that she did make like $39,000 from. I don't know why they took it so lightly here. But anyway, before I get to what her sentencing looked like, why don't I let you hear from her herself when she talked about this in court.
20-year-old Madison Russo pleaded guilty to a charge of first-degree theft after police said she pretended to have cancer and received donations online.
I didn't do this for money or greed. I didn't do this for attention. I did this in an attempt to try and get my family back together.
I saw a comment point something out pretty profoundly. It said her plan was to get the family back together, and it worked. They all came to court with her. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. She never said how the family was going to come back together, so, But I don't necessarily believe that. I feel like if the plan was to get the family back together, why the fuck are you making a GoFundMe and making money off of it, right? Plus, let's just assume that your nefarious plan you cooked up worked and your family all did come together to support you. It's absolutely going to crumble when you don't go to doctors to get your treatment, right? So if the family came together, they would immediately know that you are a lying sack of shit because you would not be going to any of these treatment facilities and they'd want to support you, right? So they would immediately know that something is wrong since you're not actually getting any treatment from any medical professionals. It doesn't make sense. So I don't think that was the real motive. That was just trying to weasel her way out of a very, very serious situation here because she scammed people out of $39,000. Now, she was ordered to repay that money that was donated to her, which is good. So all of the people who donated money, I believe, got money back for it. So it's at least a nice conclusion for them. They didn't just lose out on that forever.
The judge sentenced Russo to a suspended sentence of 10 years. That means she won't go to jail unless she gets in trouble in the future, but it will go on her record.
And basically she received probation where as long as she doesn't do anything stinky again in the next 3 years, she won't go to jail. But if she does reoffend and do something bad, then she will. Overall, I think she got off pretty easy from this. Oh, I forgot to mention she has 100 hours of community service work, which, that's not exactly the harshest punishment here to fit the crime, if you ask me. To deceive people with a lie like this here and rake in $39,000 with people that believe they're supporting a cancer patient who's going through an incredibly intense battle is so sickeningly disgusting. And I cannot believe how light the sentencing on not only her case, but cases similar to this have been in the past. Like I said, she's not the only one to do this. She's actually far from the only one to do this. But for some reason, they never actually face big repercussions for it. And I guess I just don't really understand why. Because it is still a big, very lucrative scam that they're engaging in. It's highly illegal. So why is it always so light with the punishment? I don't know. Sometimes they don't even face punishment. There's been a couple of times in the past online where people have faked cancer, got a bunch of donations, and then just left, vanished. And they, come back a couple years later, pretend it never happened, and they're just fine. They don't get in any trouble or anything. I don't know. It's just so weird to me. But yeah, I wanted to go over this pretty evil case here of a TikToker being a big ol' sack of shit. That's about it. So yeah. I hope you slept well last night, because you may never sleep again after watching this. I'm going to show you what a real demon looks like in our world. If I asked you to picture a devil, I think a lot of you would go to like him from Powerpuff Girls, like just that really classic red monster with horns. But in real life, that's not what a devil looks like. This is what it looks like. Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland is a preacher, evangelist, whom I've referenced many times in the past, that exploits religion for financial gain. He is extraordinarily wealthy by taking advantage of the people in his faith. And he does all of it with a smile on his face and an attitude that resembles just pure evil. He is what I believe to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, as they say. Let me show you one of his most famous interviews, which is going viral again, which is why I wanted to talk about it, where he was interviewed by Inside Edition about his lavish lifestyle.
How are you, sir? We'd just like to ask you about why you don't want to fly commercial. Why have you said that you won't fly commercial? You said that it's like getting into a tube with a bunch of demons. Why do you think that?
Yeah, he's one of those private jet preachers that I always like to insult and call attention to the hypocrisy of. People like him, these evangelists or heads of mega churches that live a life of outrageous luxury financed off the backs of those in their congregation who are donating under the guise that it's going to help further their faith or help the church or something like that, when really all it's doing is enabling them to live a lavish lifestyle. It always just makes me sick to my stomach. It runs so counter to the Bible that I have no doubt in my mind they will likely be going to hell without God even giving them a consideration of entering the pearly fucking gates up there. It is deplorable. It is just diabolical stuff. And yet it is so common. I just recently talked about an online pastor who blamed his cryptocurrency scam on God, saying that God made him make a shitcoin to scam the people that follow him, which has to be one of the most blasphemous things you can ever say as a pastor, but he had the gall, the fucking chutzpah, to blame the crypto scam on the Lord. And you're going to see this a lot throughout this interview, and if you ever dive into this rabbit hole of corrupt pastors, they always use their connection with God as the excuse. Well, God actually wants me to have a whole fleet of private jets. It's actually very Christian to be wealthy. And it's just a complete bastardization of what the Bible's supposed to teach.
No, listen to me just a second. Not the people. The main reason is because of the need. If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
Baloney. What a load of horseradish. You wouldn't have to stop 65% of what you're doing if you flew commercial. You can fly commercial and still reach all of the same places. There are more planes in the sky right now than there is poop in my butt. And trust me, there's a lot of poop in there, because I haven't taken my morning shit yet. You can fly commercial and still do all of the same work you've been doing. And it's not like you're doing important work, Kenneth. All you do is you're basically like this Dementor who sucks money out of everywhere he goes. That's not important work. You're just perverting Christianity to fit your own agenda of making as much doubloons as you possibly can accrue in this lifetime.
Isn't it true that you want to fly commercial so that you can fly in luxury? How much money did you pay for Tyler Perry's Gulfstream jet, for example?
Well, for example, that's really none of your business, but...
Isn't it the business of your donors?
Listen, I paid. You kind of caught me off guard here, okay?
Certainly. Well, if you like to come out here, I'd like to give you a chance to catch your breath. And
He's floundering here because he knows there's really no way of justifying this when actually confronted with the question. He usually relies on the Bible as a shield from criticism, so all the people in his faith, if they question him, he says, oh, well, you're questioning God. But now he's actually getting interviewed by someone who's done their research and is actually talking to him about how his lifestyle is the complete opposite of what the Bible talks about. And he doesn't really know how to defend it, because there's no way of doing that. It's also very telling the way he views all the people around him by calling them demons in a tube when talking about flying commercial and why he just won't do it, because he can't stand to be around people in general. He just wants to use them for his own financial gain. It's a fucking sickening perspective. And his mannerisms, the way that he does these like creepy smiles and his gestures, all of it is so menacing.
and have a conversation. We don't want to catch you off guard.
I love Inside Edition. You got to get this now. Hey, you listening to me? My wife thinks Inside Edition is, oh yeah. Now,
that'll send a shiver down your spine. The way he acts and the way he sounds, all of it is what I imagine it would look and sound like if a demon was ever made flesh on this planet. He is what I would picture the Antichrist looking and acting like. Oh, it's just like disturbing listening to him speak. My wife thinks Inside Edition is, oh yeah. What does that even mean? Like he's clearly trying his best to like suck their cock. Like, Inside Edition is incredible. I can't believe you guys would do this to me when I'm such a fan of yours. It's just weird. It's so off-putting. Everything about him feels so fake and sinister.
Thank you, Lord. Help me. Let me pray this thing.
Well, let me just ask you a really simple question. A lot of people think it's unbecoming for a preacher to live a life of luxury and to fly around in private jets. What's your response to that?
Very simple. It takes a lot of money to do what we do. We have brought over 100, let's see, the latest figures just came out, 122 million people to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Can you show me the Carfax on that? I'd really like to see the data to support that claim. What I think happened is you brought in $122 million. That's not necessarily bringing people to the faith, you know what I mean? That's more like bringing the clams to the bank, is what it seems more to me. I really appreciate the Inside Edition interviewer not pulling any punches, just playing hardball here. She is absolutely cooking Kenneth. She is slapping his cheeks on the grill and whipping up a fine ass patty here at the barbecue today. Watching Kenneth squirm is priceless, and you're going to see his defense mechanism, as it is for a lot of these corrupt pastors, is always like, I need to pray, hold on, wait a minute, I'm getting a message from God, it's a transmission into my cerebral cortex, hold on a minute, and then he's like, oh Lord, I pray, wait, hold on a second, Inside Edition, shit, I'm getting overcome with the faith again, he said I need another private jet, oh yeah! Like, it's one of those things where, in the middle of being confronted with an indefensible statement or an indefensible act, they desperately cling to, hold on, I gotta pray real quick. Like, no, I'm a good person because God's talking to me and I gotta pray. I'm so overcome with it, I've gotta pray. And you see that time and time again when it comes to this. It's pathetic. And it's honestly an affront to God, I would imagine, to try and use him as your get-out-of-jail-free card. That shit, again, that's gotta be blasphemous. It's gotta be.
Without the airplane that we have, that I bought from Tyler Perry, and I didn't pay anywhere. And Tyler's one of the greatest guys. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
Case closed. It was such a good deal, he was losing people's money by not investing it in that private jet. Man, thank God for Tyler. I have no doubt the good Lord put Tyler in the position he's in today just so he could give Kenneth Copeland a private jet at a great deal to continue to spread the good word and the gospel.
Well, my question then, okay, all right, but I want to get to the demons because people are very concerned about that comment.
Give me a chance here, Inside Edition. I love your eyes. And
I don't know what all this was here. It was like a cat playing with a toy. He was just like swatting at her or something to get her to stop. And then he gives her a random compliment out of nowhere, just like a rogue statement. You have great eyes. What the fuck is that? Why are you so unhinged? He's all over the place here.
Here's what happened. We flew in 21 days, 70 hours, 40,000 miles, touched 5 continents, and preached face to face personally with 125,000 people.
Do you ever...
What in the fuck are you yapping about? Huh? What are you blabbering on about? That has nothing to do with your statement about the demons in the tube from commercial airlines you can't be caught dead around. This is a nothing burger. What are you talking about? This is, again, dodging it and just putting it on like, oh, we do great work that can only be accomplished through the use of a private jet. We couldn't reach all of these places commercial. It wouldn't make any sense. It's got to be a private jet, a very luxurious one, so I can be closer to God up there in heaven. It's fucking ridiculous.
Do you ever use your private jets to go visit your vacation homes, for example?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Again, getting back to the comment. You said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
He was so close to letting the mask slip off his face right there in that moment. I really thought he was about to reach over and start strangling her like Homer Simpson to Bart. Like, he gets the finger out and he gets really stern and serious. That look that he gives her, that would strike fear in the hearts of anyone. His facial expressions are so exaggerated, he's like a Pixar character. The way that he's able to constantly have these wide range of emotions that he conveys like that. The way he flips from infuriated to like smiling at her in the creepiest way possible, it's alarming. Everything about this guy should be sending you into a fight or flight response. As opposed to just throwing money at him, it should be running away from him.
Can you explain what you meant by that term then? Just explain, because it's really simple. You said you didn't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. What did you mean?
Well, let me ask you.
Do you think that people that fly commercial are demons?
If you give me a chance to talk, sweetheart, I'll explain this to you. But it's a biblical thing. It's a spiritual thing. It doesn't have anything to do with people. People, I love people. Jesus loves people.
That's probably the first truthful thing he's ever said in his life. I have no doubt that Kenneth Copeland loves people. Because people are the ones that finance his lavish lifestyle. They pay for his private jet vacations that he goes on all the fucking time out the wazoo. So I know he loves people. I'd argue there's only one thing Kenneth Copeland loves more than people. Wallets. And sticking his dick in there and just fucking them raw. Taking as much money out of it as he can possibly find. Through misleading them through the faith. And exploiting them. And taking advantage of them. That's the only thing that he loves more than just people in general would be my bet. So again, he will not just answer the question of what he meant by being in a tube with a bunch of demons on it, and the Inside Edition interviewer continues to press that, which I really appreciate. He continues to just tiptoe around it. Let me ask you a question. No, goofball, just answer it yourself. Just say what you meant. Say it with your whole chest.
But people get pushed in alcohol. Do you think that's a good place for a preacher to be and prepare to go preach to a lot of people when somebody in there is dragging some woman down an aisle? It made me so mad to see that on television. I wanted to punch the guy out myself. I can't be doing that while I'm getting ready to preach.
So you just don't like to be around the sinful people or the hurtful people. Is that what you're saying?
Not the people, baby. Not the people. Back during the days that we couldn't do anything else, we had to travel commercial.
The saddest period in his life when he had to fly commercial. God bless, I can't believe he made it out alive with that. Yeah, that's horrifying, horrifying. But again, Kenneth, you're directly referencing people when you're talking about this. You gave an example of a man dragging someone down the aisle. Like, what? You're literally talking about people, and you're like, no, not the people. What the fuck are you talking about? And he brings up, like, alcohol? I can't be around alcohol in commercial. That's not a good place for a preacher. What the fuck? The reason he won't just say what we all know he meant is because he knows that even the most brainwashed in his following would hear that and get a very bad impression of it. Because he is basically calling them demons. And that could potentially hurt his bottom line.
We wrestle not with people, but with principalities and powers, unseen things, rulers of the darkness of this world. Talking about the devil, he's a very real devil, just the same as Jesus is a very real Lord.
Yeah, I'm starting to agree, Kenneth. I feel like I'm watching an interview with the devil right now. He continues, again, to just try and start spouting sermons that are pretty unrelated to this whole thing. He then talks about how many jets they have, and, well, he still has no way of defending it in any meaningful capacity. Because you can't really defend it, because there is no universe where a preacher needs this level of wealth to do what they do. It's gluttonous. That's a sin, Kenneth. It's corruption. Blatant corruption. And it comes from, at least partly, from the donations of just normal people that go to these mega churches or go to these traveling evangelists, that kind of shit. It comes from them trying to better their life. But they're doing it through a con man who's taking advantage of that desire. And it's fucking sad. It always makes me furious. Kenneth Copeland is one of my least favorite people on the planet and has been for the better part of a decade. I've talked about Kenneth for a long time now, and I'm sure I will continue to do so, because this guy is going to most likely live forever, because he is propped up by the puppet strings of Lucifer himself. So this guy, he's probably going to outlast everybody on this planet at some point.
But the main thing that happened was that wasn't the main reason. The main reason was I could no longer do what I called to do and be on the airlines. Besides that, I need my clothes when I get there.
And you have some fancy clothes. I mean, for a pastor, you are living a life of luxury. You've got great homes, you've got great planes, you drive in limos.
I'm a very wealthy man.
You're a very wealthy man.
Yes.
Cool, I guess. If I was someone that was putting money into the church and what I believe would be a man of God, I think the number one thing I wouldn't want to hear is that he just uses it to be a wealthy man with a bunch of really fancy clothes, cars, and private jets. Feels like it defeats the whole purpose, don't you think? I also can't help but focus on his turkey neck that keeps jiggling every time he speaks. It's like paper in like a strong gust of wind constantly. His neck, like there's so much loose skin on it, it looks like the rudder to a boat or something, and it just keeps fucking flapping around and it distracts me.
My wealth doesn't come from offerings alone.
Because you sell things, books and DVDs.
Yes, and I have a lot of natural gas on our property. Didn't know that, did you, babe?
Now I do.
Yeah, you do. Isn't that wonderful?
You realize that you still just did a big self-report there, don't you, Kenneth? You said that your wealth doesn't come from offerings alone, which means some of it does, which means some of your wealth is taken directly from the offerings of those in your churches and those that believe that what they're doing is for the greater good of the faith, not to line your pockets. You openly just admitted to that.
But it will run something in the neighborhood of 25 million in the poor. Can't do that and be broke.
So final question is, a lot of people maybe have a misunderstanding then about what you do in prosperity preaching. So the final question is this. To those critics that say that a preacher should not be living a life of luxury, what is your response to that?
They're wrong.
That's it?
Enough said. Hey, checkmate. Now give him more money for being wrong and hurting his feelings, so he can get himself a new private jet to dry his tears with. He says that he invests 20 to 25 million in the poor. What do you do? How do you help them? Seems like you just take money from everybody. What do you do with that 20 to 25 million that you apparently invest in the poor? I looked it up and I couldn't really find anything on that. There's really no information on it. I'm super curious now. Seems like just kind of a lie. Maybe invest 20 to 25 million in like smaller businesses that serve less wealthy areas or something. I have no clue, but I can't find anything where he's like directly helping anybody except himself, actually.
It's a misunderstanding of the Bible that if you go into the Old Covenant Do you think the Jewish people believe you should be broke?
Are you saying that Jewish people appreciate money more than... Really?
They believe in wealth.
Some people would find that offensive.
No, wait a minute now. I'm not talking about some people. I'm talking about the Bible.
Shit's getting really weird now, and Kenneth Copeland is clearly struggling and sweating. This has nothing to do with the Bible either, by the way, because the Bible makes it clear in no uncertain terms that this house of worship should never be used as a place for, like, financial benefit for those involved. Like, you know that moment a lot of people recall from the Bible where Jesus flips a table? They might forget why that happened, so I'm going to go ahead and post this. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. This has been brought up before, and I have seen a lot of slimy excuses and really weird interpretations of that to still justify taking a ton of money from people in the church. But the way I always interpreted that, and really the way I was kind of taught when I was still very religious back when I was growing up, like I mentioned, I actually got baptized twice in case the Lord slept through the first one, like if his alarm didn't go off to watch it. I did it twice just to ensure. But with this, I was always under the impression that the lesson is that the faith should never be used as just a way of making money from people through it.
The Bible also says that it's more difficult for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to get through the eye of a needle, correct?
The rest of the scripture. But he said, all things are possible with God.
I thought that was a really good dunk from the reporter there that Kenneth Copeland tries to weasel his way out of. I don't think it's a really good excuse, though. That's kind of a cop-out. Oh yeah, it does say that in the Bible, but it also says anything's possible through the power of God. When that's an excuse you see a lot of terrible pieces of shit use. What's the expression? Sin 6 days of the week, ask forgiveness on the 7th, repeat the cycle? Something like that. He's basically just saying like, yeah, no, it does say that, and me taking all this money from these people, maybe it is sinful, but hey, anything's possible through the power of God. I'll probably still get into heaven because he forgives anything, so who cares? I'll do what I want, and then ask for forgiveness, and get it.
Both of my grandfathers were preachers. They were both very poor. They lived simple, modest lives. They were extremely offended by men that made money like you do, preaching like you do. What would your response be to people that think that preachers shouldn't live this kind of a lifestyle? Folks like both my grandfathers.
And I understand that. And I love them with all my heart. It's your grandfathers that we're standing on their shoulders.
Not exactly an inspiring thing to say. It's your grandfathers that I have built my empire on top of, the preachers that were actually doing some good work and being genuine people. Well, I was able to exploit that good reputation for myself. I'm standing on their shoulders. It's thanks to them. They're the real heroes. Like, oh my god, they're turning over in their grave right now hearing that statement. That is abhorrent.
Sir, thank you so much for your time
What's your
today.
name?
Lisa Guerrero.
Lisa, God bless. Father bless Lisa today. Thank you for her grandparents. I love Inside Edition. I love the people on it. And it thrills me to get a chance to have my face on Inside Edition.
Thank you very much, Reverend. You have a nice day.
Yes, ma'am.
That's where the interview concludes. And I think Kenneth Copeland is a real asshole. I think that guy is evil. Everything about him is exactly what I would picture a demon on this earth disguising itself as. To a T. It's almost cartoonish how evil his aura is. So yeah, anyway, that's really about it. So yeah. All of you know I'm a huge wrestling enthusiast. I absolutely love it more than Garfield loves lasagna. So much so that we actually have our own wrestling league, the Moist Wrestling League, and we even dropped our most recent episode a few days ago. This isn't meant to be a plug for it or anything. This is actually a really serious topic. The reason I mention that is because I'm just showcasing my passion for this craft. And for the longest time now, many decades, there has been this stain in the wrestling industry with a boogeyman that sits atop the food chain. His name is Vince McMahon. He is a cockroach that no amount of pest control can seem to get rid of. I'm confident even if you don't follow wrestling closely, you know Vince McMahon. He is extraordinarily wealthy and he has infested tons of other things even outside of just the wrestling industry. And this man is downright evil. He has a laundry list of deplorable, disgusting, heinous acts that would make the devil flinch. I've talked about him at length quite a bit on streams and even in a couple of videos in the past, so I'm not going to be focusing on his sins from the past here. I highly encourage all of you to just Google his name. It's not hard to find any of this information. It's all just right there, out in the open, right there at your fingertips. It is horrible stuff. I'm not talking about just like some drama where he was mean behind the scenes, which of course he was. I'm talking about covering up crimes, sexual misconduct. The list goes on and on and on, seemingly no end. And that's just what we know. There's probably still tons and tons of skeletons in that fucking closet. But anyway, the reason I'm talking about Vince McMahon again today is he is now at the center of another massive lawsuit here that has actually forced his hand and had him resign from his position at the WWE/UFC. They recently merged the multi-billion-dollar deal, and Vince McMahon, in light of all of this, has stepped down. The information comes from someone named Janelle Grant, who worked at the WWE's headquarters and is accusing the company's founder, Vince McMahon, of sexual assault, sex trafficking, and physical abuse in the lawsuit that was filed on Thursday. According to the lawsuit, Grant alleged that McMahon promised a job and later promotions at WWE in exchange for sex, and the lawsuit also includes allegations that McMahon trafficked her to other men inside and outside of the company, and there is a couple of names that get dropped that are some very big, alarming names, obviously. Now, even if you're not part of the wrestling community, I bet you've heard some buzz about this lawsuit because some text messages allegedly leaked from it, as well as some of the claims in the lawsuit are extraordinarily disturbing. Like, it is some depraved shit. And I mean shit, literally. One of the big parts of this lawsuit that was popping off on Twitter, like general Twitter, was this section where Miss Grant is talking about a threesome that McMahon put her in. And she says, early in the encounter, McMahon immediately directed Miss Grant to lay down on her back in a supplicating position. While straddling over her, McMahon defecated on Miss Grant's head. McMahon left to shower off, but he instructed Miss Grant to remain in place with excrement in her hair and to continue performing for his friend. While Miss Grant requested protection, none was offered. McMahon and physical therapist actively continued with the threesome and directed Miss Grant's sexual performance for around an hour and a half while she was left covered in feces. Absolutely sickening and sadly not surprising behavior from Vince McMahon. I believe this is only the tip of the iceberg. I think this is the first domino to fall, and there's going to be a lot more information that comes out about some of the degeneracy, some of the crimes and awful shit that was going on behind the scenes under Vince McMahon here. Now, I saw quite a few people caught off guard by this, surprised to learn that Vince McMahon is a bad guy. They were wondering how this stayed buried or how any of the sexual misconduct allegations didn't surface sooner. Like, how was it all kept a secret? I had to do a bit of a double take when I saw that. I got fucking stun-locked for a second. Now, of course, it's no one's fault. I don't blame anyone for not knowing about Vince McMahon's past. Like, if you're not an active wrestling fan, there's a really good chance you just didn't know any of this about him. But the only secret here is that there was no secret. Everyone knew about Vince McMahon's sexual degeneracy. Vince McMahon's sexual degeneracy is about as much of a secret as smoking cigarettes being bad for your health. This fucking ghoul paid nearly $15 million in hush money to quiet 4 women who were bringing up claims of sexual misconduct against him that had occurred over a period of 16 years. And that's actually why he previously stepped down. Now, of course, he stepped back up into a prominent position with the company after the merger with the UFC, and now he is stepping down again, once again, from sexual misconduct claims. So it's just never really been a secret that this decaying corpse, this fucking revolting gremlin of a man, is a horrifying piece of shit. It's just more people are opening their eyes to Vince McMahon being this fiend. Thanks to Janelle Grant's lawsuit, really making waves and highlighting a lot of previously unknown things like the sex trafficking and some of the other names that were included here to show how deep this rabbit hole goes and how awful all of it was. Now, sexual misconduct is something Vince McMahon calls home, so this isn't his first rodeo, and he tried to cover his own ass not literally because he shit on someone's head, but legally tried to cover himself by trying to pressure Grant into signing a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for payments over several years totaling $3 million after their relationship and employment ended. So he was trying to silence her, to make sure she wouldn't, blow the lid off of this. Now, I'm no lawyer, I'm no expert, but I don't think a non-disclosure agreement protects you in the case of crimes. Like, I don't think if you're sex trafficking someone, you can have all of your victims sign an NDA and then they can't speak about it, you're safe. And if they do speak about it, they're the ones in trouble. I just can't imagine a world where if Grant signs that non-disclosure agreement and then goes forward with bringing this information to light, that she would face punishment for it. Like, I can't even picture that kind of lunacy. Like, listen, ma'am, we're really sorry about that sex trafficking thing. That's bad stuff. But you violated your NDA. And breaking an NDA is so much worse. You're going to prison. You're going to the slammer for that. You don't violate the contract. It's sacred. It's binding. Like, I just don't think an NDA protects you in the case of a crime being committed. Again, I'm not an expert, though. The only NDAs I've ever signed were to play a video game early, not poop on someone's skull, among other horrible, horrible acts. Allegedly. It's fucking scary stuff what was going on behind the scenes at the WWE with Vince McMahon. The parent company has issued a bit of a statement here. The parent company is TKO Group Holdings, and they said that McMahon doesn't control TKO or oversee day-to-day operations at the WWE, and that while this matter predates our TKO executive team's tenure at the company, we take Ms. Grant's horrific allegations very seriously and are addressing this matter internally. And a spokesperson for Vince McMahon also made a statement and said that the lawsuit was replete with lies, obscene made-up instances that never occurred, and a vindictive distortion of the truth. He will vigorously defend himself. I wish he would vigorously try and dive into a wrestling ring and tear both of his quads again. This is an evil man, and he has been evil for the entire time he has been with the company. And more people are starting to see this now. He is a fucking stain in the industry. I know there is still a lot of Vince McMahon fans because they separate art from the artist. He plays a character in the WWE, the commissioner, and he has been kind of iconic in the scene. I get that. Like, there is a lot of great WWE moments that, unfortunately, Vince McMahon is there for and was a big part of. Like, he played the role well. But as a person, he is terrible and a horrible person to have at the position of power that he does in the industry. He shouldn't be in the industry. He shouldn't even be outside of a fucking jail cell for the things he's done. Like, I can't separate art from the artist when it comes to something like this. I just can't do it. I know there are people that are, and I'm not, like, mad at you for it or anything, but I can't. He is just absolute trash, scum, the lowest of the low, and I will, of course, be keeping my eyes on this lawsuit as everything continues to develop here. I just wanted to give you, like, the very bare bones of it, like the basics. There is so much to it. I urge anyone out there that's curious to take a look, but just fair warning, it is disturbing. It's very not pleasant to read. So yeah, just wanted to talk about it a bit. That's it. See ya.